This is part 3 of our video series on exploring the male identity crisis. Last time we looked at changing gender roles, and in this video we're going to look at the impact of late capitalism and the growing wealth inequality. So one thing to notice about men is we typically draw our identity from the things we do, compared to traditionally women more likely to draw it from their family or their internal resources, whereas men tend to be quite task-based in our identity. So for example, our job provides a huge amount of our identity. And it used to be like you'd get a job for life, you'd go off, you'd be an apprentice, you'd become a blacksmith, and that was it. You'd be a blacksmith for your life. We don't see that anymore, of course. Now, and especially in recent years and decades, everyone's having to retrain multiple times in their careers, and redundancies are common. So you might have multiple different careers throughout your life, and each one of those transitions, often a forced transition because society is just changing so rapidly, is a loss of identity. So where men were traditionally drawing their identity from work, they now can't do that because suddenly a whole industry just isn't hiring anymore and they need to go off and retrain and do something else. Now, another issue is, so capitalism has really used feminism as an excuse to move to a two working parents model. So when feminism said, well, we should allow women to go out to work, which is a great idea, what we really wanted was a society where the man or the woman in a heterosexual couple could go out to work. But what capitalism has given us is that now housing and the cost of living is so expensive that we've had to go to a two working parent model where both parents need to go out to work just to pay the bills. Now, if we think about if you're drawing your identity as a man from being a provider, but you're now suddenly in a world where one wage isn't allowing you to provide, you're going to feel like a failure because you're working hard, and that isn't enough money to be a provider. So again, we see a loss of identity there. It also means the demands have massively increased. So if we think about this in a historical context where man, and again, this is short-term history because this idea of traditional gender roles didn't exist 200 years ago. But if we see the man going out to work, the woman staying at home looking after the family, those are both full-time jobs. Especially looking after the family, for those of you with parents, you'll know it's more than a full-time job. But for this thought experiment, let's call it a full-time job. Each parent has a full-time job. Now we're in this two working parents model where both parents are having to go out to work, and you've got to look after the children as well. That's 3 full-time jobs split between 2 people, which means everyone needs to work 1.5 jobs at a minimum, even if we're only saying looking after the family is just a full-time job, which again, parents would say it's clearly more than that. So the demands on everyone have increased, both men and women. Suddenly we're working more than a full-time job each, and we're all exhausted. We're all absolutely exhausted and don't seem to be getting anywhere because it's not like we're making huge amounts of cash. We're just doing all of this to pay the bills, to pay our rent, to buy food, to heat our houses, these kind of basic stuff. And so everyone is exhausted. In addition to that, we've got the increasing globalization. So people are moving around more for jobs, which takes them away from their traditional family supports. So again, historically, you might have had grandparents or other relatives around who could help out. But if we're constantly having to relocate for jobs, that means that family support isn't there. And therefore, those people that might have helped ease the burden of trying to work 1.5 full-time jobs each or more, many people work multiple jobs now, that isn't around either. So this growing wealth inequality where we've got these array of billionaires and everyone else is struggling to pay their bills is really hitting men hard because it's robbing them of their identity from the workplace because we're constantly having to retrain, and the idea that going out to work even pays the bills anymore. And on top of that, they're completely exhausted. We're all exhausted from trying to do more than what is a reasonable amount of work.